You already know that I'm a big fan of the ALILA brand, but this one has a bit of work to be done in one very specific area. We'll discuss that on the full tour today, so let's get into it. Welcome to the heart of Rajasthan. If you'd like to know the exact rate that I paid for my stay today, or my next 5 videos in queue, please check out the description below. And if you're new here, hi there and welcome to the channel. My name is Kevin. The internet needs more honest content, plain and simple, and that's why I'm here. I make airline trip reports, high-end hotel reviews, and cruise ship tours as well. I self-fund all of my videos, and I don't alert any company that I'm coming, because I want to have as normal of an experience as possible. That means that in this video, I'm going to give you nothing more than my own personal, honest, and unbiased opinion. By the way, when I say welcome to the heart of Rajasthan, I do in fact mean welcome to the far northeast of Rajasthan, but it doesn't quite have the same ring to it. The reason I'm welcoming you to a state instead of to a city, well, that has a lot to do with the ALILA Fort Bishangarh's remote location. So join me now as we drive up from Jaipur. I do kinda wish that I could play you a sampling of the soundtrack my driver selected for the trip. We started off with a healthy dose of Michael Jackson, meandered through Shakira and The Weeknd, and I had my first view of the fort as we were working our way through some 20-teens electro-pop. So, the location is odd. I've had odder, but I suppose you need to get a fair bit out of town before you need to start building warrior forts. The very narrow driveway we're on now, weaving up to the fort itself, I learned later on, is not how guests normally arrive at the resort. So let's head back down here to properly begin the tour. The tent that we're in now acts as a Haveli for the resort. Havelis are a traditional open-air gathering space on the subcontinent, which are used at various times of the year for various purposes. This one was actually a bit of an afterthought, built after the hotel was opened in 2017, as a way to make guests' arrivals a little bit more comfortable. With the perfectly positioned reflecting pool beneath it, here's the fort itself. The restoration and conversion took a full 7 years and resulted in expanding the structure upwards, as well as the ground level facilities we're standing in now. I was kind enough to hold this shot for my editing self so I could show you the addition. Everything above this line is new, essentially everything with larger windows. Where the new meets the old, you can see the original battlement scalloping. The entire fort is built atop a single granite hill and dates back to the late 18th century and originally served the princely state of Shahpura. The hotel has a small fleet of Innovas and electric SUVs, and those are the only cars that are allowed to go up to the fort itself. So if not arriving by their transport, you would be dropped off in this area and enter the Haveli. Let's explore where we are a bit. As I mentioned, we're in Rajasthan in the far northwest of India. Jaipur, Rajasthan's largest city with over 4 million inhabitants, is the closest city to the fort. The feeling I got from some of the staff while I was here was that a large number of their guests drive down directly from Delhi, which is a 4 to 5 hour drive away, depending on which part of the city you're coming from. Note that most marketing materials for the hotel quote this as a 3-hour drive, which Google strongly disagrees with. If you're like me though, you'll be arriving from Jaipur to the south. From the airport, it's around a 90-minute drive. While I'm sure there are others, the two most significant sites relatively close to the hotel are the Amber Fort and the Nahargarh Biological Park, which are each about an hour away. When looking at the fort itself, it appears to be a single structure, which it is now, but originally it was 2 concentric structures, which have since been linked with the vertical expansion. And just to give you an idea, we really are in the middle of nowhere. But I'm not complaining about that, and I will explain it in detail later. Down near the arrivals pavilion, you also have the pool area, plus a few other facilities mainly focused on larger parties held at the hotel. While I was there, they were also building a slew of ground-level villas, which I believe were due to open already. While I never saw the villas, I've never been in them, they weren't actually built when I was there, I can tell you for sure, if you're making your way all the way out here, stay in the fort, please, it's worth it. As with all of my videos in this India series, if you're new here, feel free to click the link above or in the description for my India playlist, which will have around 25 videos by year's end. And since this video is longer than normal, I promise I won't be talking the entire time. Do you ever wonder why I and other content creators ask you to click that thumbs up button and subscribe? Well, there are two reasons. First, well, honestly, it's just really easy to forget to do it. We all forget to do it sometimes, myself included. Secondly, it truly does help this and any other channel continue to grow by increasing engagement and letting YouTube know that this was quality stuff. So please, click it, subscribe, and share with friends and family. If you'd like to support even further, my Patreon is linked in the description below. Thanks very much in advance. When I arrived, I was given a pungent welcome drink, and around 7 seconds later, I sat down and was asked if I'd like to get checked into my room in the room itself. Sure. While that was all being done, my host offered to take me on a tour of the grounds, which I did after I filmed the room. And that brings me to my first big point. The service here is different. In fact, it's surprisingly different. In fact, as I was told 11 times that day, that's their motto, surprisingly different. He was sure to point out the rabbits in the cage and say originally they were bought for a kind of petting attraction, but then they kept mating, like bunnies do, and now there are so many of them that they don't know what to do with them, so they just leave them in the cage. That's the kind of surprisingly different that I'm talking about. Imagine that you were going to like McDonald's and you went through the drive-thru, and when you pulled up you heard this. Welcome to McDonald's, where we put the happy in Happy Meal. We hope you're having a blessed day. What can I get for you? Yeah, that's the vibe that I was getting, except with the speed that suggested that he just wanted to get this over with as fast as physically possible. Especially when you compare this to hospitality at other hotels that I've stayed at in India, a lot of work needs to be done here when it comes to service. While not all staff were as uninterested as the chap that I've been pointing out, we were at overall like a 3.5-star big box chain in Ohio level of service. Except for perhaps my server and the chefs at dinner. They were all breaths of fresh air. Alright, let's head up to the main attraction. As we tour the fort, allow me to apologize for one thing. Normally, I try my best to lay out the footage in a way that allows you to understand the flow of the property. That's not going to happen today, because to this day, I still don't really understand the layout myself, and I got lost a handful of times in the fort itself. Okay, from here on out, it's 98% positivity, because the facility itself is stunning. My second big point is the incredible design integration and just the conversion in general. Like I said, the restoration took 7 years and was led by principal designers Sandeep Khandawal and Ritu Khandawal of Thapatya Architects. Walking here through the main entrance, all of the original keys from the fort were displayed just inside. Apparently, Sandeep had an equally difficult time understanding the structure, as there was no functional blueprints for the fort. He ended up spending 7 days on site just to understand the structure completely, and from that time, he derived the inspiration to convert the larger central openings into courtyards, the dead spaces into elevator shafts, and the floor spaces into the guest rooms themselves. Of the design, Ritu said, quote, We tried to rejuvenate the essence of the fort by getting to the details and trying to follow a vocabulary that fully belonged to the structure. Jaroka-style windows and Tudor and cusped arches highlight the inspiration that flows from the Jaipur Gharana architecture, an amalgamation of Rajput and Mughal styles, while trying to keep the same elevation of the fort intact, and at the same time, harnessing daylight into the building." Unquote. As we head to my room now, we can get a really good feel in the corridors for the original form of the fort, which has been well preserved. I had booked a standard heritage room and was upgraded, likely due to low occupancy, to a royal suite, which is the smallest of the suites on offer. Note that due to the architecture, every room and suite in here is just a little bit different or a lot of bit different. So note that my room may not look like yours even if we have the same category. As I mentioned in my community post about this hotel, one of the core reasons why I've come to love ALILA property so much is for their ability to seamlessly combine their own style with that of the location that they're in. When you look at this room, it's both undoubtedly an ALILA and also undoubtedly Rajasthani in influence. I'll let you enjoy your tour around, and I'll come back to you with my favorite and least favorite details in just a bit. Alright, let's start with my favorite details in the room. First up are the textiles. They're just enough. By that I mean, there's a plentiful mix of beautiful fabrics and patterns in the room, but overall it still feels fresh and neutral. Second thing is that it's just really well laid out. I give the designers so much credit here. So often these days you go to new hotels where they build the building themselves, each room is a rectangle, and the room layout sucks. The flexibility and bespoke nature of the furnishings here really did allow the designers to fully utilize all of the space, without leaving any unnecessary amount of dead floor space. Last up, we have the variety of high-quality materials used in the room. This one is very closely related to my textiles comment as well as the ALILA comment. Everything fits the brand and the heritage, but also feels modern and premium without feeling at all generic. I actually only have 2 details that I didn't like, so I'll give you one more positive. The bed is literally what dreams are made of. As for the things that I didn't like, the AC in the room itself worked great, but there was no ducting at all in the bathroom. Since this may have been related to the structure of the fort, I didn't deduct points for it, but my god, it got hot in there. Last up, well, this isn't in the room as much as it leads you to it. The hallways. They're really dark. I know lighting design played a huge part in the overall plan of this property, and I understand the moody, mysterious vibe that they were going for. But dimly lit, moody and mysterious is not a great choice when you literally have boulders built into and jutting out from the walls, and in some places, from the floors. If this hotel was in the US, they could probably just change their name to ALILA Fort, you're probably gonna sue us. Alright, let's check out some of the venues on site, starting out with the primary bar in the hotel, Madhueni, which is bi-level and has a separate cigar vestibule, I guess you'd call it, on the upper floor. Just a few bits about ALILA as we explore. ALILA is all about unique locations. In fact, I just got back from, I believe, their most unique location in their entire portfolio of 18 properties. They're part of the world of Hyatt and have been so since 2018 when Hyatt bought their parent company. Depending on the source, they have anywhere from 5 to 11 properties in the pipeline at the moment, but 3 of those for sure are coming to India. The first new ALILA is coming to Coorg, halfway between Mangaluru and Mysuru in Karnataka. Then we have Igatpuri to the north of Mumbai in Maharashtra. And finally we have one coming to Lansdowne in Uttarakhand at the base of the Himalayas. So, safe to say, they're not playing it safe. I'm really excited to see what they come up with in these 3 very distinct locations. If you'd like to check out a couple of other ALILA properties that I've reviewed in Bali, check out the links above and below. Now we're in the venue called Kachchawa, which serves the 4 C's: coffee, chai, cake, and of course, champagne. This intimate venue, which I will note is not air-conditioned, also serves a complimentary high tea service. I'll say that it wasn't overly hot in here, though it was over 100 degrees outside, but the air was just stale. In this part of the interior, there was no airflow, so it just felt hotter than is comfortable. So let's head up to the rooftop for a lot of fresh air and a bit of magic. This is the 6th floor, which is the roof of the original fort. Everything above this is newly built. At night, this turns into Nazara restaurant, where I dined. In this shot now, it's not open yet, but I will mention that with the amount of dust that settles up here on everything every night, They need an army of staff to clean everything every day, but an army they do not have. They opened at 7:30 p.m. I believe. I arrived around 10 minutes later to a silent restaurant and had to find someone to ask if they were actually open. They were. But what I do love up here are the views. This is actually my third big point. I've traveled a fair bit. I don't think I'm jaded, but sometimes it does take a bit for me to let the gravity of a location hit me. This one hit me quickly and hard. At sunset, the heat, the views, the breezes truly do make this an incredible atmosphere. I was so entranced with it all that I almost forgot to film the sunset itself. I remember specifically thinking while I was up here, the only one up here mind you, I would happily drive all the way up here again and spend another night just to see the sunset from up here again. It's that good. Okay, so dinner. Let's get the bad out of the way first. The visual atmosphere up here was beautiful. Auditory, not so much. All you could hear was insanely loud, hard driving techno being played from the village below. Now, I know that's not the hotel's fault, but perhaps there is something they could do to try to address it. What is the hotel's fault, though, is I'm sorry to say it like this, but the complete deadbeat musicians that they employ. I sat down at 7:40. They strolled in 20 minutes later and began playing at 8:19. They played one song, then took about a 10-minute break. Then they played another song, and then the same. After I had dinner, I had to run down to my room to get a cash tip for my server, and when I came back up, they were already packing up their stuff. 2 songs in total. I know it was low season. I know it's hard to make a restaurant feel inviting when there's literally only one diner, but the hotel has to figure out something for this. Anywho, let's get into the service and the food. Dinner tonight would be an unpublished Tali menu. Easily the best Tali that I had on this trip. It was really dark, so I'm going to rely on photos here. We started out with mint chutney and pineapple chutney served with papadum. Next was samosa chaat, which was incredibly refreshing. For the appetizers, I was given veg and non-veg. For non-veg, it was an assortment of lamb, chicken, and fish. And for veg, we had paneer along with 2 vegetable patties. So far, everything was incredibly flavorful. Then came the main event. Ginger chicken, dal makhani, braised lamb, wild berries, paneer, chicken pilau, raita, and more, followed by a variety of desserts. There was something very elevated home style about all of this food on offer here, and I mean that in the best way possible. It wasn't complicated or fussy, they weren't trying to make it fancy, but it had loads of character and flavor. And just very quickly, my server in particular was incredible. With his knowledge of the food and tradition, he reminded me a lot of my server that I had at the Raffles Udaipur, but in a much more casual and conversational manner. I came back to my room to find some more sweets and some unique cork slippers. Before we head to breakfast, just a peek at some of the other areas you can explore up around the fort. I would love to tell you where they are, but honestly, I only found them by walking around in random directions. If you had a really big family and you rented out the entire fort, this would be the ultimate hide and seek venue. Finally, we have breakfast at Amara. This is their all-day dining venue, and despite being open all day, I did need to try to find staff when I arrived for breakfast. I suppose they may have buffets on weekends or during high season, but for today it was fully a la carte. I was brought a fruit plate and then ordered my favorites, a paneer paratha and akori eggs. The food was delicious, the pickles were wildly sour in a good way, and the service was friendly once I found him. A few last bits before I wrap this up. There was also a spa and a small fitness center. So let me conclude with this. If 5 years from now, they hope to be a destination location and more than just a wedding party machine, they really need to step up their game on the service front. Hyatt has 45 hotels in India, with at least 37 more on the way. They don't really have an excuse for not having a stronger service team here. Someone needs to remind them that if they expect to even attempt to compete with the likes of the Indian brands, they're going to need some serious training. That being said, literally everything else besides the service was great, and overall it did make it worth the trip, easily. One thing coming up in the score is a small penalty for a few power cuts. I'd say around 5 or 10 of them, which happened mostly after sundown. Note that I don't mean central grid cuts. The village still had power. I mean momentary losses of power of just the hotel's power. For a full explanation of my new penalty scoring system, please check out my last video at the Oberoi Uday Villas. I really do hope that you enjoyed this surprisingly different video today, and hope that you click that thumbs up button and subscribe with notifications on, so you don't miss out on any of the incredible content that I have coming up in the months ahead. I'll see you next time from the regal Rambagh Palace in Jaipur. Probably the most requested property that I've ever had. Oh, and thanks for watching until the end.